This is where the virus is spreading phrase came from.
This is the pomp approach.
Literally, the thought process was I originally said one of Bitcoin's greatest qualities is that it's captured. I said the mental energy of a generation. Right, people were so excited, and the talent was flowing into the space, the capital was flowing into the space, and so you get these boom and bust cycles, but innovation follows that talent and capital, right? Because there's just so much mental energy being applied to it.
But what I worry about is like we look at what happened with retail in late 2017, early 2018, and this is what I worry about is a ton of retail investors got crushed.
Absolutely.
And I think the hard part is those people aren't going to come back for a while because their trust has been destroyed. And we did it through this financing vehicle where we created a bunch of wealth under the guise of decentralization that really flowed into the hands of a few people.
Mm-hmm.
And you see this, right, reflected in like all of these crypto conferences and like people going to exotic locations and living really lavish lifestyles. And then this gets glamorized, which brings in, you know, less educated wave of retail. And I find that a bit problematic. Like crypto has a little bit of an image problem. And yes, like the sexiness, like the sex, drugs, rock and roll appeal of crypto is definitely there. But I think it's a double-edged sword because a lot of people have gotten really burned. And I think a lot of people look at it and they're like, eh.
Yep. Well, if you think of the last 12 months, so we're doing this August 2018, so August 17, right, is really when I think kind of the more mainstream audience started to at least hear about it.
Oh, yeah.
And then you go into October, really November, December. And then you look at the price depreciation since those days. There's a possibility that more people lost money investing in Bitcoin in the last 12 months than made money, right? On an aggregate number of investors.
Absolutely. I have so many stories from retail investors and institutional investors, by the way, who really got burned. And I think part of the problem here is people like stories, right? Where humans have a rich oral history because we tell stories. That's how we share information. That's how we connect with other people. So the story around crypto up until January 2018 was this. Everyone had a friend or someone they knew who bought Bitcoin early or who bought Ethereum early. And the asset they bought went from X to Y, and that delta was, 1,000%, 12,000%, 5,000%. And so people look at that and they're like, ooh, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Ripple, people who got into these assets early that have been around for 5 or 6 years, they made 100x, 200x, 1,000x their money. I want to do that. Mm-hmm. And then all of these ICOs are pitching, we're the next Ethereum. We're like Bitcoin, but better. And so people buy it.
Yep.
And then that doesn't materialize. And I think this is the problem with growth stories, right?
Yep.
And this is the way equities markets work,
Absolutely.
right? Like we see it happen there as well. It kind of reminds me of penny stocks.
Absolutely. No. And part of it is you're trading or gambling. Right? That if you look at 100 of them.
But you get to say you're a tech investor, right? Like you get to gamble full time. I love gambling. I'm a degenerate.
I tell people that you can't claim you're investing if you don't have a thesis, you don't have underwritten the risk, and you don't have a price target.
Well, and I think this actually is a really good point. So, people are so focused in investing, and this is true of venture as well, right? Mm-hmm. I worked a lot on the post-investment side. People are so focused on everything up to the point of writing a check. And then once they write the check, they're like, okay, my work is done. No. Actually, your most important job as an investor, one, the investing process is about controlling entry price.
Yep.
And it's articulating a thesis and a strategy as an investor. But as a fiduciary, your primary responsibility is that post-investment life cycle.
You have to monetize it. Yep.
How do you track the status of these projects, right? How do you articulate a cogent thesis on where your liquidation points are? And how do you periodically rebalance and de-risk and take out some of the principal and then reinvest? How do you think about your role in the governance of these companies that you're capitalizing? And what's so funny to me is like, I've been doing this in the venture world with the portfolio companies I've been working with for the last 5 years. And now crypto funds are like, oh, like maybe we have to be partners to these projects. I'm like, I feel like I'm taking am I taking crazy pills? I think so. It's just really interesting, the naivete and again, I sound like a skeptic, but I feel like we're not learning lessons. I feel like we're so unwilling to accept fundamental truths about human nature that we're forgetting that, like, hey, when you write a check, like,
what's part of the revolution, right? Is if you go from, step 1 to step 7, you don't get the benefit of learning what 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 include.
Actually, the other thing is people have gotten away with free riding, right? Both in their diligence process. So people are like, oh, if Andreessen invested, if USV invested, I'm investing. So there's free riding on the investment process side where people basically do no work and are able to raise crypto funds. And then the second component is there's a lot of free riding in the post-investment process. And it happens in traditional venture, which is why everyone's like, oh, find a strong lead because I don't want to do the work. Let's have someone else who has more capital at stake do the work to help you grow. Same thing in crypto world, right? Like, and the problem is when you have a bunch of investors who are free riding off of everyone else, and they don't actually own equity, they just own tokens, which are liquid right away. What's the incentive to actually help people long term? And this, I feel bad for projects who raised money from investors. They basically sold their souls to raise this money. And then as soon as the token lists, everyone dumps the token, takes their cash out, and they're trying to build, they're like passionate about building a vision. And everyone who told them they were also passionate about it just fucked them, right? They're like, cool, we got our cash, bye. And that's not a good paradigm either. So I do feel bad for companies who have a big vision, who are trying to build it. Like, that's why I think a lot of these projects who didn't set a date for releasing their token, they're probably better served to not release their token until they've gotten the max juice out of their investors.